Hello artists, it's Mrs. Warfel, and we are going to do another one of our Elements of Art books, except this one is going to be a combination of form and value. These go hand in hand, V-A-L-U-E. See if you can spell that right, because I didn't do such a good job there. V-A-L-U-E, value. All right, now let's start off with form, okay? So form can be actual form, like it's three-dimensional. First of all, it's 3D, three-dimensional, and let's call it actual. There can be actual forms, and there can be illusions of form. Illusion of 3D. So we can have, here's some examples. This is a sculpture, a fiber art sculpture that's three-dimensional. I can measure it in 3 dimensions. So I can measure how tall it is, how wide it is, and also how deep it is, how much space it takes up. So this is a sculpture. So forms that are real are usually called sculptures. All right, now this is a full sculpture in the round, meaning that we can spin it in space and we can see it above and below. It might be on display somewhere where you can't see underneath, but that just depends on how it's on display. All right, so that's sculpture in the round. This is little, so small things can be sculptures, and you've probably seen giant sculptures in parks and museums. Now this is another type of sculpture, so that's sculpture in the round. This one here, another fiber art sculpture. This one's three-dimensional. I can measure it, height and width, and also depth, but the depth is very minimal. We can see, in fact, that the back isn't even finished on this one, right? It's meant to be hung up, attached to a wall, and viewed only from the front. We can see that these little beads push in to the distance, so it has some thickness, overlapping parts. The ear is in front of, the face is in front of the body, right? The little poof on the head is closer, and the beads pull in. This is called a relief sculpture. And it's really sort of two-dimensional. It's still three-dimensional, but it's only meant to be viewed from one front edge. So it's either attached to a wall, hanging to something. And again, these can come small, like this little guy here, or really large things, like in architecture. You'll see big pieces of relief sculpture in architecture. So that's three-dimensional. That's actual items that take up space, and they're physical. We can touch them and feel them going deep into space. Now, there's the illusion of form, which is when we use techniques on flat stuff. Techniques like shading and perspective. Hopefully you can read my writing. Perspective drawing. So there's lots of techniques for making flat things look three-dimensional. All right, so form. Now we've done some of these practices in class already, right? We did shading techniques. We've already done in colored pencil, right? So let's pretend the light is coming from above, and we shaded at the bottom. We scumbled toward the light to protect the highlight. You take time to do yours really nicely, right? I'm just going fast here, so it doesn't take forever for you to watch. So we'll talk about a little bit more about this. But that's one way with shading. Another way, if I have something that can't be adjusted through pressure, with how hard I push down on the tool, like a pen or a marker, I could do hatching, like that. Make marks and then cross it over, right? So I have to build up my density differently on these, right? On these two tools. So we've done some of this work already. So let's talk about that. So for the illusion of form in drawings and paintings, what we do is we take a shape and we transform it. You know what transform means, right? Change form to a form, right? So we start off with that two-dimensional and we go to the three-dimensional. So Two-dimensional in this case would be like a circle, which we can measure in height and in width. Let's pretend that's a real circle, right? Let's get that a little rounder. And then that's a circle. We can go S-P-H-E-R-E, sphere, S-P-H-E-R-E, and here we can build that illusion of depth, right? By throwing shadow and create, we already had height and width, and then this creates the depth, right? The shading and shadowing. Sometimes it's easier to see that same effect with a square. And what's the 3D version of a square? Cube, right? Remember I said we can use techniques like shading and perspective. All right, so it's hard to do perspective if you're just doing one with a sphere. If you're doing more than one, you can just make one farther away, right? That would be this perspective. And this is, of course, the shading, right? So let's put a little table there. All right, so now this one looks close because it's big. This one looks far because it's small. Let's do 3D here. With a cube, we can draw to give it depth. So that's the perspective drawing. But we can also use shading techniques on this, right? We could do, if we have a tool like a pen where we cannot layer through pressure, we can't do density, we can do it through numbers of strokes. So light, medium, and dark. We need 3 things. We'll talk about that on the next page when we go into value. So light, let's go medium. Let's take that all the way across. And then let's go dark, cross hatching. So one direction of lines is hatching, 2 directions or more is cross hatching, light, medium, and dark. And of course, with this one, we can do it through pressure. It's very light pressure, right across the whole thing. Another layer with a little more pressure and building up density. Do that across the whole thing. And more pressure. These probably are kind of similar. So let's build that up with pressure. And if we really wanted to go for it, we could use a complementary color or another dark. Let's do the complementary color and make that darker. See? Nice. All right, let's look at, because what we've been playing with here is value. Let's pop over and talk about value. All right, so value, V-U-E, value is light to medium to dark. Now, light to medium to dark. Let's see. You can keep it simple with just light, medium, and dark, or you can have all the value changes in between. If you remember back to our pressure gradient, we started off really heavy, strong, and then we lightened up gradually. Remember, grade gradually. What grade are you in, right? You gradually increase your scholarship from kindergarten through your PhD, right? So that's a gradient, gradual. So value, you could do a value scale like we've done already with our colored pencils. So you could do heavy pressure. I'm doing opposite of that. It's just to lighter pressure and even lighter. Good practice, right? To hardly any. And you might have to build up another layer to try to make it really even. All right, so there's that. So you can play with that, but with a tool that you can't modulate or vary with pressure, what you do is you build it up in density, right? So try it with a pen or a marker, and what you'll have to do is have less and less, more white paper showing through. All right, so I've opened it up, but you can see, I think I need more darkness over here. Feel free to cross hatch to create that. And spacing those lines a little further apart, light to medium to dark, to get that transition. All right, so value is light to medium to dark, and there's a lot of other variables to that we can get into with painting, but I want to keep it pretty simple for what we're doing. You can mix colors, so we did that on this cube here. Let's do it again. Let's say we want dark, so it doesn't have to be only pressure. it could come through the layering, right? So I could put more on top, I could push harder, but I could also come in with other colors, right? By layering. So I could use my color wheel knowledge and add a darker color on the color wheel to this side to increase the darkness here. Right? This is still feeling like an orange strip, and I could use the complementary color. Opposite on the color wheel is blue, so I could go blue. If I go in the same direction, right, put some blue on this dark side, cross it a little bit, and look how much darker I can get. And if I want that to really feel orange, kind of go with the last layer of orange to keep it feeling pretty orange. All right, so that is value changes, light to medium to dark. You can do it either very blendy and soft or very noticeable, like you would have in cross-hatching, and thin veiled layers like we did in our pear. All right, that's something to think about. We'll have lots more to say about both of these topics when we're in class together. Form and value work together hand in hand. All right, we'll see you again soon. Thanks, artists.